It begins not with freedom or hope, but with the clatter of chains on rotting wood, the bitter taste of silence, and the breath of men who have already been forgotten. The year is 1788, and a ship groans under the weight of Britain's discarded souls, creaking through angry waves as the wind howls like it's trying to warn them of the land ahead. The sea is violent, punishing, thrashing against the hull like a prophecy. But it's nothing compared to the storm inside. The storm of hopeless men chained together in darkness. Below deck, in the ship's foul belly, the stench of human waste and fear clings to every breath. And each creak of the ship is a reminder that they are not passengers. They are cargo, crammed shoulder to shoulder in darkness, covered in sores, coughing, crying, praying to gods who no longer answer. Hundreds of convicts await a fate worse than prison. Their crimes are not of violence, but of survival. A loaf of bread stolen in hunger, a voice raised against injustice, a life born into poverty punished by an empire without mercy. These were not monsters, not traitors, but men and women cast out by society, swept away like dirt under the royal rug of progress. Britain, bloated with empire and overflowing with prisoners, made a decision that would reshape a continent. It exiled its poor to the edge of the world. That edge was a place they called terra nullius, Latin for nobody's land, a lie dressed as law, a doctrine used to erase entire civilizations. But this land was never empty. It was sacred, vast, ancient, alive with stories sung for 60,000 years by the world's oldest surviving culture, the Aboriginal Australians. These people didn't carve the land. They listened to it, learned from it, passed down wisdom through song lines, fire, and stars, thriving in harmony with nature itself. They knew the rivers as ancestors, the rocks as storytellers, and the deserts as maps of memory. They didn't need monuments, because the land was already a monument to life. And then, one day, sails appeared on the horizon, not as signs of discovery, but as omens of invasion. The British did not come in peace. They came with redcoats, muskets, diseases, and a sense of entitlement backed by gunpowder and paper. The newcomers planted flags and named what was already named, imposed borders on boundless land, and brought a foreign concept, ownership. For the Aboriginal people, it was not colonization. It was apocalypse. Entire clans wiped out by influenza, measles, and bullets. Children were taken in the night, lands stolen in the day, and the very act of existing as an Aboriginal person became a punishable offense. Some were driven into the desert, others were forced onto missions, and many were simply slaughtered, their bones left to bleach under the same sun that once warmed them. Museums across Europe proudly displayed Aboriginal skulls and tools, not as cultural treasures, but as curiosities from a conquered race. The empire called it civilization, but history calls it genocide, slow, deliberate, and devastating. Meanwhile, the convicts, abandoned on a harsh and foreign shore, were told to build from nothing. No homes, no tools, no understanding of the land or its people. They dug into the dirt with blistered hands, fought against heat and insects, and bled under overseers who treated them like beasts of burden. Many died nameless in unmarked graves, swallowed by the sun-scorched earth that would one day carry the weight of cities. But in time, through toil and pain, they began to build not just roads and buildings, but a new identity forged from survival. The convicts became settlers, the settlers became soldiers, and slowly a colony began to believe it was a country. Then came the gold. Veins of wealth hidden in the hills drew fortune seekers from across the globe, transforming dusty outposts into bustling gold towns. With gold came greed, and with greed came tension as waves of immigrants, Chinese miners, Irish rebels, German tradesmen, clashed over land and opportunity. Racial violence exploded, fueled by fear, ignorance, and the belief that Australia was for whites only. The government responded not with unity, but with division, enacting policies that institutionalized racism and kept power in the hands of the few. The White Australia policy became law, forbidding non-Europeans from entering the country and shaping national identity through exclusion. For over 70 years, this policy defined who could belong and who could never belong in the land of the so-called fair go. Meanwhile, a deeper horror continued in silence: the government's systematic removal of Aboriginal children from their families. These children, known as the stolen generations, were told their mothers didn't want them, were beaten for speaking their languages, and taught to hate who they were. Generations were lost, not by accident, but by design, erased in the name of assimilation. Then came a greater war, World War II, and for the first time, bombs fell on Australian soil as Japanese planes attacked Darwin. Britain, distracted and distant, offered little defense, forcing Australia to look across the Pacific to a new ally, the United States. American troops arrived with their slang, their jazz, and their firepower, and with them came the first stirrings of modern Australia. The cultural grip of Britain began to loosen, replaced by fast food, blue jeans, and American dreams. Australia emerged from the war stronger, more independent, and ready to define itself not as a colony, but as a nation in its own right. Waves of immigrants followed: Italians, Greeks, Vietnamese, Lebanese, each adding their stories to the national fabric. Cities transformed, languages mingled, cuisines fused, and the idea of Australia as a white-only land began to crumble. Yet even as the suburbs grew and the skyline rose, the wounds of the past still bled beneath the surface. Aboriginal Australians were still denied basic rights, still pushed to the margins, still treated as shadows in their own homeland. Life expectancy lagged, education rates dropped, and incarceration skyrocketed, a cycle of disadvantage rooted in centuries of oppression. National protests erupted, peaceful but passionate, demanding land rights, recognition, and the simple dignity of being heard. The land itself cried out, sacred sites bulldozed, water poisoned, spirits disrespected in the name of profit. In schools, the truth was watered down or erased entirely, history rewritten to avoid discomfort. But the land remembers, and the truth, no matter how deeply buried, always finds its way to the surface. Aboriginal voices grew louder, artists and activists refusing to be erased, pushing their stories into national consciousness. Reconciliation became a national goal, But reconciliation without justice is only a word. Australia, a nation that once prided itself on fairness, had to confront the unfairness at its core. A country built by the unwanted had to reckon with who it had decided to keep unwanted. The descendants of convicts now walk in parliament, build companies, teach universities, while descendants of the land's first peoples fight just to be seen. Australia is a miracle and a mistake, stitched together with pride, pain, courage, and denial. It is a land where the sun shines on beaches soaked in blood, where laughter and sorrow lie side by side. It is both the great escape and the great forgetting, a place of new beginnings, haunted by unfinished endings, a home for millions, and yet a place that still struggles to make peace with its first inhabitants. A modern country built on ancient land, still searching for balance between progress and truth. It is wild beauty and cruel history, a dream that cost too many people their own. But it is also resilience, of convicts who survived, of cultures that refused to die, of people who rise again and again. Today, Australia is a global leader in education, peacekeeping, science, and innovation, a long way from prison ships and iron chains. But for every skyscraper built, there's a scar left unhealed, a story untold. For every anthem sung, there's a voice missing from the choir. For every celebration, there's a silence begging to be broken. The fight for justice is not over. It's only just beginning. And maybe that's what makes Australia powerful. Not its perfection, but its potential. Because to rise from darkness and still reach for light, that is the definition of strength. The real story of Australia is not one of clean lines and clear heroes. It's messy, painful, beautiful, and real. It's not just beaches and barbecues. It's bones in the ground and dreams in the sky. It's not just a country. It's a contradiction. A land that took everything, except the spirit of those who called it home first. A land that forgot its past until it started to remember. This is not the version found in textbooks. This is the version carved into rock and whispered in wind. It's the one found in unmarked graves and painted cave walls. It's the one told by elders who still remember the old songs. The story told in protest signs and courtroom battles. In artwork, in dance, in tears on country, in apologies made, and actions still missing. In firelit ceremonies beneath city lights. In children relearning lost languages. In a people who will not be silenced again. In a future that must be built together. Because a country born in chains must choose what freedom really means. It must look at its past not with shame, but with honesty. And it must listen, truly listen, to those it once refused to hear. Only then can healing begin. Only then can pride be real. Because Australia cannot be whole without its first people. It cannot move forward while some are left behind. It cannot shine if it hides its shadows. But if it dares to face the truth, to reckon, to reconcile, to rise, then it will be unstoppable. This is the real story of Australia, written in blood, built with strength, and still unfolding beneath the southern stars.